Well, I did it again. Welcome to Micaiah's Paralogue on Maddening mode for Fire Emblem Engage. We hit the Unit Cap again and figured out that the AI is really weirdly programmed yet again and can be super exploited for tons of experience and just, fun shenanigans. At this point, it's just the fun of knowing that you can do it more than needing to do it to beat Maddening. So, how did we get into this situation? Well, basically, I've been going through the story and all of the paralogs, and this was the first one after Ike's paralog that I thought I was going to be overwhelmed trying to turtle up in a corner. Basically, every other one you can do really simply, but man, once all of the units started pouring forward and your units are spread out across the map at the start. And so this one seemed really intense, and then I knew that the flyers were going to show up, and so I was, worried about how I was going to be able to pull this off. And it ended up being way easier and way harder than I thought it was going to be because of a couple of reasons. So getting into it, once again, we hit the unit cap several times. This time it looks like after Micaiah starts moving, you get the flyer reinforcements starting to pour in with Griffin Riders on the left and Wyverns on the right. Of course, all of the units on this map are super fun. Radiant Dawn is actually my favorite Fire Emblem game, so I absolutely love this map. And, the Griffins and the Wyverns are supposed to represent what seems like, the Bird Lagoos. And so they just start pouring in once Micaiah starts coming. 4 on each side, so 8 of them every turn that are just going to be pouring across the map. And you very quickly hit the unit cap. Honestly, I should have hit it earlier, and that was one of my mistakes. So I'll go over a couple of the mistakes that I made, but basically how I figured out this map and got set up for it. So after Micaiah starts coming in, you'll very likely hit the unit cap quickly. And again, the unit cap is very weird. I realized I didn't say a number in the Ike paralog, but there seemed to be the cap at 63 enemy units, which is just so random. So I was thinking it's probably not just an enemy cap unit, or enemy unit cap, like in past games where there could be like 50 enemies total on the map at a time. But what it seems like is that there is a 75 total units on the map cap. So in this map, we have 12 deployment slots. Therefore, 63 of these slots of the 75 cap are being filled by enemies. And then throughout the video, you'll see just my background footage that if there's this giant pause at the end of enemy phase where just nobody's moving, a lot of times that seems to, kind of have two parts where the AI is going through all of the units just standing around doing nothing and checking if they can do something. But that's fairly quick. The longer pause seems to be where it checks if any of the reinforcements that are supposed to spawn are able to spawn because of the unit cap. And it does seem like it's directly related to how many reinforcements are spawning, so it's individually checking each reinforcement if it's able to spawn. And so, like on the Ike map, when there's the 10 reinforcements per turn, and then in this one with the 8, you can get pretty long pauses at the end of enemy phase with that, which it's just fun to see how the game, works and how it runs and what it's like. So the first mistake that I made was I killed off way too many of the initial units running towards me, just on my retreat back to this corner, because your units start spread out across the entire map. So I was kind of just like taking pot shots on the ballistas on my way back, just throwing out, a Thoron to hit an enemy, and then just using Canto, because at this point I have Canto on basically like all of my ranged units, just because I think it's fun. And so I think I took out too many units, which made dealing with the flyers a lot more scary, because I probably had an extra 7 or 8 flyers that were able to spawn in because I killed too many of just the trash units. Because this map has really weird unit equipment on it. So there are basically just a couple of enemies that are actually threats, where you have a couple of mages. Actually, I think it was just one mage, or sage, because at this point they're all promoted, of the initial wave of enemies that's running towards you. So everybody else was physical, which made me realize I probably would have had an even easier time if I stuck Louis on the seize point, and could have my avatar over with the rest of my group being able to have more support backing him up. So that's definitely a possibility. If you do that, you do need to obviously kill the sage before he can roast Louis alive. So that was one of the things that I was doing, was using the fire cannon to slow down everyone's movement, and then I would ballista the sage, get him killed, and then I moved everybody else over. But in doing so, I also took out a couple other units that were just, happily in the way, and I would avoid doing that and just get to the corner quicker after taking out that sage, so that there's more of just these trash, one range, random, just cavalry and infantry units that are completely powerless on this map. Because basically, for the entirety of tanking, there's 3 spots that all of these one-range characters can even attack from, You have the 2 spots over on my left corner, and then you have the 1 spot that can attack into the avatar defending the seize point. And so, even with 63 of the units running around, only 3 of them are even getting to attack, because most of the melee units will flood in first before any of the snipers and bow knights get there, and they'll just be stuck in the back for a long time. But speaking of the snipers and bow knights, they were the next really big threat that I kind of didn't think of at first, because the enemy will not use the flame cannon to shoot at your units, but they have nothing against using the ballista. So I have included in my background footage Hortensia getting absolutely destroyed by a ballista, where I was trying to use Alchrist to just farm up Emblem energy by shooting for 0 damage on an armor knight, or a general, so that he could use Lynn's Astrostorm to snipe off all of the different archers and the flyers. That's basically like the first idea that I had, was like, oh, I can just, shoot this general for 0 damage, and then farm up enough energy to keep Astrostorming and killing all the flyers, and that's like a 0 risk way to do it, is what I thought. But what ended up happening was I had the dual strike plus on a couple of my units, so they all procced coming in for their backup strikes to do 30-40% of his health, or however many of those strikes procced on that one turn with the longbow. And then Alchrist, the absolute mad lad, double Luna, double crit the general. And so I just killed this general that was holding a very important spot, because the first unit that would move to replace his spot was the general that was blocking the ballista closest to me, so then one of the snipers could move on it and destroy Hortensia. So that was just like such a funny random coincidence of everything stacking up right for that spot to be opened up, and then Hortensia just gets absolutely wrecked. So that was something that I realized, like, okay, if I ended up having to reset, what I would have done to do better is use Alchrist and probably Sidal the Dancer to empty as much of that ballista as I could, and then probably, like, if you know that a sniper is going to be able to get it, move all of your flyers back, because they can be safely out of range of it, and then just let them waste all of the ballista ammo. Or you can do what I did, that was kind of the scuffed, just never allowing whatever unit is sitting on top of the ballista to move until you can use your flyers and Canto units and Astrostorm and Byleth Thoron to clear all of the archers first, and then you can start clearing other units so that they move off the ballista. So that was kind of my units that were able to help clear really well, was having Canto on flying units, because everything in this map is able to be flown over, makes it very convenient to just, swoop in, shoot a thorn at somebody or toss a spear and then back off back into safe zone. Very simple way to be clearing enemies, and then using Astra Storm or something like having Byleth on a caster on a mystical unit so that they get the Thyrsus to shoot 5 range Thorons at people. And then at one point I did have Allier use Tiki to start clearing some of the flyers, and that was helpful as well. So moving on to flyers is the other big threat, because basically your avatar is in the safest position on the entire map. They have an avoid tile that heals and only one spot for ground units to attack from. So when the flyer showed up, I was like, oh crap, this is going to be intense. I thought that they were just going to attack all of my units that are hanging out, and it would be really difficult to defend from 4 of them coming in at the same time. And so I had, the perfect setup where I was like, okay, I can divert some of their attention so that hopefully none of them are able to gang up on people, using my flyers to do a diagonal wall over the flyer only zone, and I'll try and just kill them all at the turn that they show up. But they just flew right on by all those other units. So that was something that I as soon as that happened, I was like, oh, this is actually way easier to do than they want you to believe. So the flyers will completely ignore everybody who is not blocking the seize point directly, which is amazing and makes it so easy. But I was not planning on that, and so it was a little scary for me at points, because I was just like, oh, I'll just get free Tiki leveling up on the avatar, but I didn't have them super high, so I only had level 1 life sphere, not spear. And so I was only getting 20 HP back from that, and then 10 HP back from the platform, and I could have 3 people attacking me now with the flyers. And so what it ended up being was I was still basically safe. It would have taken 3 turns in a row of having the flyer land a 40%, the paladin land a 50%, and the axe wyvern land a 20%. It would take 3 turns of all 3 of them hitting me in a row for my avatar to have died. Technically could have happened, but I never even had to crystal and then change the RNG so that it didn't happen. And if I would have just had life sphere plus, I think is as high as it goes, maybe it's just 1+ that gets 40 HP, there would have been 0 chance of me dying, and that would have been very easy to get in the arena. I'm sitting on 70,000 bond crystals at the moment, so there really isn't any risk. I just was doing this as a first attempt to see what could go wrong, and ended up not having to reset, but if I needed to, there's a way to fix this, just so that you can make your runs better for this. So, really nice. Then clearing the flyers kind of became my main concern, because they did technically have a chance to be able to kill my avatar. I used the avatar to clear out the flyers, and used Astra Storm to snipe them down. The one thing that I did notice was I had to be careful about killing enemies in front, because a lot of the melee units, even though they're supposed to move first in the turn order, they see there's nothing to do. And so a lot of times some of the archers or even Micaiah would move in to attack from range. And I didn't want to have to deal with that for clearing out the entire, rest of the 60 enemy units. And so I just reset when that happened and realized, okay, just be careful, don't clear out units in front of me, only clear out the flyers on the side, which luckily, I think it was a sword paladin, maybe it's a Great Knight, that was there in front with my liberation sword. I did 0 damage to them and did plenty of damage to the flyers, and so I was like, oh, I could just leave that equipped and clear out the flyers fairly quickly while not having any risk of clearing out enemies in front of me. So that was, the entire setup to get into the absolute madness that is all the enemy units right there. Slowly working my way through, clearing them. Had to be careful not to open up the ballista spots for archers to move on and start sniping me. But, you know, nothing too crazy. And then I ended up just trapping Micaiah between 2 units and using Chain Guard plus the healer version of Dragon Vein to have an infinite loop right there of her not being able to do any damage. So, very simple when it comes down to it because the AI is so weird. Man, if the flyers were aggressive towards all player units, it would be so much more difficult to cheese this map. But as it is, I think that it's very cheesable for anybody to, no matter what point your army's at, like, as long as you kill that one sage and then be careful not to open up a spot for Micaiah, then Louis would be totally safe on the seize point, and then you can use chain guards to protect anybody else if you want. And yeah, that chain guard plus divine or healer dragon vein combo is really nice because you can basically just do like the chain guard fort grinding anywhere. It just takes a few extra clicks every turn to get the dragon vein up, but very easy, very replicable for anybody who wants to try and break this chapter. The only other kind of possible concerns are with some of the Dawn Brigade units. So like Jill is the only flyer that is actually aggressive towards the other units and has a Brave Axe, plus a Life Crystal, still really not threatening at all. You can kill her very easily and she doesn't do that much damage, so not a huge threat. And then Soth does have Pass, so you have to be careful not to open up a spot for him like I did, where he can walk in and randomly crit you and kill you. But you should have more than enough units that even with Pass he can't move to the back end of your army, and so you can just eventually let him get close enough to your army as you're clearing out and then kill him from range, which makes it very, very simple. But yeah, also I don't think I mentioned, but it's like I love that the flyers do have this AI because it is totally the insanely annoying crows that, yeah, was it ravens that are the completely non-aggressive? It's probably hawks too in Radiant Dawn that are completely non-aggressive, and they'll just dart past your entire army and fly up onto the game over zone. So annoying. I have definitely ended Iron Mans to those ravens and hawks flying into the game over zone, probably more than any other single point in Radiant Dawn. But of course in this one, it's not a zone, it's a single square, which makes it a million times easier than the Radiant Dawn map. So even on Maddening mode, this map is very easy to trivialize, and you know, aside from that, I just had to do like one 10-unit long override attack just for fun, and then immediately crystal it back because he was gonna die. So it was like, just had fun with it. This is a great paralog from the absolute top tier Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn, and if you want to break it on Maddening, hope that this is helpful. I'm got a few other paralogs that I think are fun to make videos about, but honestly most of the other ones are like even more simple and straightforward to turtle into a corner and trivialize the entire paralog. So we'll see what else I feel excited enough to make a video on, or if you guys have any other, you know, questions or things that you would like to see me try and do on Maddening mode, I would love to do that. So hope you all have a great one, and see ya.